So we finally have the Sony ZV-E10 Mark II. Now this has the brand new Z100 battery. It has 4K up to 60 frames per second with 10-bit 422 with all codec as well and compressed formats. So you're gonna get some pretty incredible image quality performance out of this thing. And also a brand new kit lens, the 16-50 Mark II. But there's no IBIS. We gotta talk about it. So the Sony ZV-E10 Mark II is the newest camera in Sony's ZV range. Now it has the 26 megapixel X-R CMOS APS-C size sensor that you see in the A6700 and FX30. It has the Bion's XR processor, but it doesn't have the new AI processor in it. It's got a newer and improved 1.037 million dot 3-inch screen. It's got the larger Z100 battery, the zoom rocker on the top. It's got the quick switch for photo, video, and SNQ modes. It's just got one dial at the back, just like the ZV-E1. It's just got one card slot, a micro HDMI, a 3.5mm audio jack in and headphone out, and it's got a USB-C 3.2 Type-C slot. And it weighs a total of 292 grams without the battery and SD card. Now you can currently get this for $18.49 Australian dollars or $19.99 with the kit lens. So this has that 26 megapixel backside illuminated sensor out of the FX30. Now I absolutely love the images I'm getting out of the FX30, and obviously it's the same as the A6700 as well. And it's obviously upgraded from that 24.2 megapixel front side illuminated, so there should be better low light performance against the older sensor. But this also allows you to have that 4K up to 60 frames per second as well, which, you know, last one we were capped at 4K 30 and it only had 8-bit codec. This now has the new 10-bit 422, so S-Log is going to be amazing. You've got S-Cinetone, you've got creative looks out of this thing, which you're going to have so much more, I suppose, creativity when it comes to filming with this thing. And obviously the photography stats are, you know, a little bit better as well. Now also on top of that 4K 60, it doesn't have 120 frames per second. Now they did have to, you know, cut back on that because the A6700 has the 120 and so does the FX30. There needs to be, you know, a gap between these models. And 4K 100 isn't really, or 4K 120, depending on if you PAL or NTSC, isn't really a feature that you absolutely necessarily need. If you do want some slow motion, it has 1080p at 120 frames per second. And if you do go into S&Q, that's how you can actually get 422 10-bit as well. But you know, 4K 60 is more than enough for a lot of people. And for someone who will actually be buying this, they're probably only going to use 4K 25 and 4K 30 anyway, as just like your standard sort of vlogging mode. Okay, so there's one big thing that a lot of people aren't going to like, and yeah, it's this: no IBIS. We got to go outside and check out what the performance is going to be like. Okay, it's time to address the concern. And now the concern is obviously stability. This doesn't have IBIS, and I know that could be a big determining factor if someone's going to be buying this camera or not. Now the ZV-E10 Mark I didn't have IBIS as well. It only had active stability. But this also has active stability, but it is improved, or apparently it's improved. Now, I am using the newer kit lens, the Sony 16-50 3.5 to 5.6 Mark II. Now that has apparently going to be working with the body and active stability in terms of that, you know, overall stability. And that is great because any kind of lens with optical steady shot is going to help quite a lot. Now, currently I do have just the standard stability, which is just the lens stability. I don't have active stability turned on, but I will do that in a second to see what it's going to look like. But okay, so turning on the active stability has activated that 1.5 times crop. Now, it's a pretty hectic crop, but this should really work in with the lens and give you crazy amounts of stabilization. And already the lens stabilization was perfectly fine, so I know that this is going to be fine in this particular situation. When we get out and start walking, this is where things could differ, but it's pretty interesting how good the digital stabilization is getting in these kind of bodies, like I really wish I actually had this with my Sony FX6, because no IBIS, no active stability. Yeah, it's pretty tough with the FX6, so I know what you guys are going to be going through with no IBIS inside the body. But hey, I've got ND filters inside the FX6, so that is a very fair compromise, to say the least. But what I do want to know as well is that, you know, what's the third-party lens going to be like? This is the Sirui 16mm f1.2, so I do want to throw this on here and see if the stabilization is going to work. All right, so this is with the Sirui 16mm f1.2. Now, I've got the stability on active, so this is all digital stabilization. There's obviously no OSS inside the lens, and it is a third-party lens, so hopefully it's still going to be talking to the camera quite well and stabilizing the shot. But we'll pretty much head all the way home and see what this stabilization is going to be like. Now, obviously in both of the shots, I don't have an ND filter, so the shutter is cranked. Now, your stability is going to be better if you have that ability just to up your shutter speed a little bit more, because there's more, I suppose, in focus, more sharper frames for the digital stabilization to analyze, and you're going to be able to stabilize it so much better, obviously in camera, because remember, this is all done in camera. This isn't post stabilization. It's not going through Catalyst Prepare or Catalyst Browse and stabilizing it. This is all in camera, so it's going to be faster for your workflow. That was a huge bump, and I wonder if that was going to be stabilized quite nice. So honest thoughts, driving shots, acceptable, not acceptable? Let me know in the comments below. So we have the ZV-E10 Mark II with the 35mm lens on the left, and Sony FX30 with the 35mm lens on the right. And now we have active stability on the left and just the regular IBIS for the Sony FX30 on the right. And you can see there's a pretty clear difference. Active stability actually does really well, considering that it's a pretty long focal length. Now we'll switch it over with both active stability. Same settings, same lens, just one camera has IBIS and one camera doesn't have IBIS. So I think actually the ZV-E10 Mark II does a better job when it comes to, you know, just not shifting the frame around really fast like the IBIS tends to do when it's paired with the active stability. It's pretty interesting. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. So now I've got the kit lens on the 16-50 OSS Mark II on the left, and the FX30's actually got the old 16-50 lens. Now OSS is on and active stability is on, so it should be very similar judging by the last results. You can sort of see that, you know, having no IBIS is no real issue when it comes to this 16mm lens. You can see small micro jitters. Now mind you, this is not me ninja walking. This is me just walking absolutely normal. So it's pretty interesting with these results. So stability seems to be pretty good with both of these cameras with the new kit lens mounted on the ZV-E10 Mark II. And I've got the old kit lens on the FX30, but it's pretty stable. Which is really good because you've got IBIS and no IBIS. So that stability test was actually pretty interesting. I do feel like the active stability is actually pretty good compared to IBIS. Now, you could notice obviously a little bit when it comes to the walking stuff, and obviously when it came to the car shots, I'm not sure if the gyro data was telling it some weird things, but you could see the frame sort of shifting around. That kind of looked a bit weird. And I guess that's just the digital stabilization trying to figure out, you know, where to stabilize. So it is kind of strange in that particular situation. But I think one of the biggest things that comes with, you know, digital stabilization is that it is cropped in 1.5 times. So if you do actually have a 16mm lens, like the kit lens, you're cropping in 1.5, it's already at 24mm, and that's 24mm APS-C. So full frame equivalent is another 1.5 on top of that, which ends up being about a 35-ish mil, is 35 or 36. That is too tight if you are trying to, you know, have it on your hand and vlog with it. So you're going to need a lens with OSS and try not to use the active stability on top. So that is tough. That is very, very tough. It's a pretty tight crop, and you do have to take that into consideration with your lens choices. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Now, one of the biggest issues that a lot of people had with this in the past was that battery life. Now, this finally has the brand new Z100 battery in, and hopefully we are completely seeing the back end of the FW50 batteries. They were tiny, they pretty much didn't last, whereas the Z100 batteries are fantastic, especially when it comes to, you know, these newer Sony cameras that are optimizing the performance when it comes to battery life. Now, it pretty much has a whole bunch of things that I was already expecting. I knew it was going to be pretty much just a small upgrade from the ZV-E10, and it was going to be very similar to the ZV-E1 in terms of what specs it has. Now, this has that cinematic vlog mode, which, if you don't know, you can shoot in 2.35 to 1 aspect ratio. So essentially it puts like black bars at the top and bottom and gives you a really nice sort of thin cinematic sort of feel vibe. And then you've actually got 5 different looks with 4 kind of moods on those looks, so you can actually bake in a fairly decent color performance. And what it generally does is it adds a little bit of sharpening and contrast on top as well, so it's pretty much a full baked in file that's ready to go. Now, when it comes to beginners, I mean, it could be a really good start if you do want to try and shoot some nice cinematic videos when you're, you know, traveling, vlogging, whatever you're doing. But besides those kind of looks, you do have S-Log3 in here as well with that 10-bit 422, so you can color grade it to however you want. But it also has, you know, the new S-Cinetone, which gives you pretty much a baked in standard look anyway. Now, on top of that, you can actually load in your user LUTs as well. So if you do want to have some sort of look that you want to load into this, you can do that. I mean, it's something that I generally don't do, but at least it has that option in there. Now, in terms of who this is actually for, is, you know, a lot of streamers could actually use this because it does have USB-C, which you can actually stream through, and it's got a really nice 5 gigabit per second USB-C on the side that you can actually do 4K with. And you can see they've cheaped out on the doors because they've gone to plastic hinges, whereas the ZV-E1 actually has metal hinges, or at least a metal rod with the plastic sort of pivots off that metal rod. So the ZV-E1 does feel better when it comes to the doors. These ones are just a lot cheaper and quite plasticky, quite annoying actually. So overheating was one of those things that I was really concerned about when I was hearing about this and how small it was going to be, what kind of specs it had, and I really wasn't optimistic. But at 25 frames per second in this environment, now we are in winter, but my room is about 24-ish degrees. It's standard room temperature. I have the aircon on, and it pretty much lasted forever until my battery, you know, pretty much gave out. So that's great. When it comes to hotter situations, this is where people in North America will be able to test it for me, so you're going to have to, you know, jump over to their videos. But 50 and 60 frames per second, I got about 50 minutes in 24 degrees Celsius, so that's pretty good. And I mean, 50 frames per second, who's going to be hitting the button for that long with 50 frames per second? For me, they're 30 seconds to a minute maximum. They're burst shots when I do slow motion. I am doing slow motion on purpose. I'm not sure what kind of filming you do, but it was no issue for me. You know, 50 minutes is plenty, but in hotter situations, I can understand. It's a small body. It has a large, you know, 26 megapixel APS-C size sensor. There will most likely be overheating. So yeah, it's passed all my tests, but when it comes to summer, That's the tough thing. Now, one thing I do like, and I know that a lot of people are actually going to like, specifically the younger generation or portrait shooters, is that the UI flips vertically, and this is a very welcomed feature, and I cannot wait for that to actually come in a couple of other cameras, because, you know, if you are shooting in vertical, you want to still be able to see the features that are actually, you know, utilizing on that screen vertically, and not, you know, have to look weirdly at the screen and everything's on the side. You know what I mean. If it is vertically, it just makes things so much easier to understand and see. Now, for when it comes to stills, there isn't really a major performance bump. It's 11 frames per second when it comes to the stills performance in burst mode. It's mainly the autofocus. So you have from 425 focus points all the way up to 759 focus points. So there's a ton more focus points that this is going to capture, and it's pretty much just going to utilize the whole screen now. Whereas when it comes to video, I think it's 425 to maybe 459 or something like that. There isn't a massive bump, or 479, something like that. There isn't a massive bump, but the autofocus performance is clearly better because it is the newest gen. Now, obviously autofocus as well. This does have bird eye autofocus, which is a very welcomed feature, especially if you do, you know, some wildlife videography, photography, but it also has animal and human eye autofocus as well. Now, make sure you stay tuned, because I will be putting this up against the FX30 to see what the performance is going to be like, but also what are the key differences between, you know, the ZV-E10 Mark II versus the FX30. You know, is it worth just saving your pretty penny and going a little bit more to the FX30? Or if you have the FX30 already, is this a pretty decent B cam? So yeah, stay tuned for that. If you do have any questions, please let me know in the comments below. I'll put a link in the description below for my color grading course and my LUTs that I am selling as well. And yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one. All right, let's get it.